Bienvenidos, Ushamdi, and welcome CTS231, Section 841 students for the second 8-week term of the fall 2017 semester at Anne Arundel Community College. This is the Networking 4 course, or the Connecting Networks version 6 course from Cisco Networking Academy. And this morning's Packet Tracer video tutorial and solution set is going to be on Packet Tracer Activity 2.3.2.6, where we're going to be tackling probably the most challenging material from the early chapters dealing with serial links, and that is going to be PAP and CHAP authentication. And these are definitely two of the more confusing topics for learners who are new to Cisco networking material and specifically to serial link configuration. So let's go ahead, excuse me, let's go ahead and dive in here. So here is our topology. Again, not a very tough activity because we're going to be presented with a lot of the material that we need, but there is something we need to cover in here that I was hoping they would have resolved, but they have not. And so we need to make sure we're very clear on one thing when we start to talk about the CHAP authentication. So we've got our addressing table here at the top. So it says, while reviewing the router configurations, note that the use of both static and dynamic routes appears in the topology. So let's test connectivity from PC to laptop. So we'll pull the PC up here. And when the PC windows opens up, we're going to be pinging the laptop at 192.168.30.10. And that was an interesting response there. Let's see. It appears it's taking the PC. There we go. Taking the PC a second to pop up there, so we'll go to our desktop to the command prompt and we'll simply ping 192.168.30.10 and let's see, do we have connectivity? And we do. So what we're confirming is that we do have connectivity because now on these serial links we're going to go in and we're going to be doing some work. So we're going to configure router 1 to use Ppp encapsulation with router 3. So it's going to be this connection here. Now, remember from the previous video, we talked about the significance of the DCE, the data communications equipment, and where we would typically see that equipment and why we would typically see that equipment on the telco side, right? Or see those interfaces, the DCE interfaces on the telco side. Here, there is no telco involved. If there was a telco involved, this would be the telco out here, right? And I love how they've got it set up for us to do CHAP authentication because this is typically how you would do CHAP authentication, right? As we would be dialing in to the provider. The provider is going to issue that challenge saying, send me your username and password. And then we're going to authenticate that information from the telco side of the house, right? But here internally, just like in our labs, the placement of the DCE or the DTE is not of major significance because, again, it's internal to our network. And you can see, here's the DCE interface on router 3 between 2 and 3, and here's the DCE interface down here on router 1. Let's say that this was that telco setup with the telco being 3, we would want the DCE interface here so that both of those interfaces were DCE so that the clock rate, right? In other words, that synchronization that's required would be controlled by the telco, and I'm sorry, I'm drawing with a mouse right now, from the telco side of the house. Okay, so again, definitely an important point that we want to make sure we clarify. So everything is working. Let's pull router 1 up here. And with router 1, we're going to bring our CLI up. And so we're asked to configure Ppp encapsulation between router 1 and router 3. So let's go from user exec to privilege exec. And let's say show IP interface brief first. And you can see the serial 000 connection is up and up. Can I ping what would be 10.1.1.2, 10.1.1.2? I can. We've got connectivity, and we would expect that because the PC was able to ping through the network over to the laptop. But let's see what happens when we go into global config and then interface configuration mode. And if I was to say do show run real quick here, let's take a look at what serial 000 looks like. And you can see we are the DCE side. The clocking has been set to 4 million bits or 4 megabits per second, right? 4 million bits per second. And here's our IP address. No encapsulation is set, right, in terms of being specifically configured. However, what is the default encapsulation? So if I say do show interface serial 000, we can see that the default encapsulation is HDLC. And there are keep alive messages that are being sent back and forth, right? And the loop back is not set. And again, this is not referring to a layer 3 loopback address. What this is referring to is, excuse me, what this is referring to is that the interface is not in loopback mode. Or in other words, this interface is not seeing a loopback configuration, right? To where traffic would simply go out the interface and come right back in the interface. So loopback is not set, but we are using HDLC encapsulation. So let's change that encapsulation to PPP, and you can take a look what happens here, right? The interface goes down, the neighbor goes down immediately. So now when I say ping 10.1.1.2, as we would expect, the interface between router 1 and router 3 is down because the encapsulations do not match. So a key takeaway is you cannot mix and match on the same point-to-point link, right? And I'm stressing that because router 3, this link here, which is HDLC, this link will continue to work. It's between the interfaces on the same point-to-point link. I can't have one side as HDLC and then the other side as PPP. That will not work. And you can see that there's proof that that is not going to work right here. Now, we've changed it on one side. Let me make sure we take a look and then enter the appropriate commands. We're going to be changing it on router 2 as well. So let's come over here to router 2 and we'll make that change. And what we're going to see happen is what we just saw happen on router 1. So before we do that, show IP interface brief will conclusively show, and let's stretch this out a little bit so we don't have as much text wrapping. And you can see here that the interface is up. So can I do ping 10.2.2.1, which I believe is ping 10.2.2.1, which I believe is router 3, and it is, right? You can see that we have connectivity, right? So even though it's down on the left-hand side between router 1 and router 3, the connection here, this point-to-point link, it's still up here. And it'll be up until we go in and do this. I say interface serial 001 Encap PPP. And you can see that the interface now goes down, right? So let's resolve this issue because the encapsulation type needs to match on both interfaces that are participating in that point-to-point segment. And so we can bring that back up by going from user exec to privilege exec into global config, then into interface serial 000, where we're going to say encap PPP. And that's going to bring back the adjacency for EIGRP as well as the connectivity at layer 2, right? So without the layer 2 connectivity, which is the encapsulation on the serial interface, that's our layer 2 connectivity. Without that, we lose all upper layer connectivity. But when I bring back the layer 2 connectivity on the serial interface with the PPP encapsulation command, it gives me back my layer 3 connectivity, and so the adjacency comes back with EIGRP. Now let's go into serial 001 and say encap PPP and do the exact same thing. All right, so we've got that information back here. Or we have the adjacencies back, we've got reachability. So now with the PC and the laptop, let's check again. But now it wants me to check out here to the web server, and the web server is 209. And so let's pull this window back up and give ourselves a little more room here. So let's ping 209.165, and that web server is 200.2. So do we have connectivity? We're probably going to have to do some ARPing here, so maybe a timeout, and we do. And so again, we're validating that the configuration works, and if I were to come back and do the 192.168.30.10, the laptop, you can see that I've got reachability there as well. So the reason that we're doing this is before we make a change, we need to confirm that in fact the reachability works. So that if it doesn't work after we make the change, we don't sit there and say, oh, well, I wonder if it worked before I made the change. I wonder if it's the change that's causing the problem. So now we would know that that's the problem. So when we come back up here, we're going to pick up here on configure ISP to use PPP encapsulation with router 3. So we're going to click on this internet cloud, one of the few times that we've done that. You can see we've got this switch here, and then here is the ISP router. So we're actually going to be configuring the ISP side of the house. And so let's get into privilege exec with the enable command and into global config interface serial 000, and we're going to say Encap Ppp. All right, so that, I'm just looking at the instructions here. I want to make sure we're good. Okay, so we've entered Encap Ppp. So now what they're asking us to do is to go ahead and click the upper left arrow. Where are we at here? Whoops, that's not what I want. We'll do the Control-Alt. What is it looking for there? Let me go back. Where is it at? Control-Alt and left arrow. And that did not do it. Give me a second here, because rarely do we go into the internet cloud by kicking the back in the upper left corner. Oh, right there. Okay. Yeah, very rarely do we go into the internet cloud. So we're clicking back, which is right up here in the upper left corner. So that brings me out. So now if I come back to the PC, and actually that is not what I want to ping. That's the laptop. Laptop's still working fine, but we've changed the encapsulation over here. And again, this is how it would be. The DCE side, where the clock rate and is controlled, is going to be on the provider side of the house. So now when we try to ping out there, obviously the destination host is unreachable because this interface has gone down. On router 3, you can see we get the message it's gone down. Do show IP interface brief. We can see that the serial 010 is up, down. So at layer 1, and this is how this should be interpreted, status is layer 1, protocol is layer 2, and this is what I mean by status. So this column here under status, this is a reflection of my layer 1 connectivity. So when it says up here, what it means is that it senses that there is a connection at layer 1. There is a physical cable connected to this port, and it is up. However, at layer 2, which is the protocol, right, our encapsulation protocol, we are down. And so that is why we've got this mismatch between PPP and HDLC, and that is why we're seeing the connection as down. So let's go ahead and bring back the window here. We'll close that out. So we don't have test connectivity to the web server. And this says that it should be working, and I'm curious, I don't believe we configured, oh, it's, okay, so the previous step it wanted PPP, because if we were to say do show run, and we were to look at serial 010, yeah, PPP is not set. So the reason it's saying it should work is it looks like it wanted us to do that up here. Okay, R1, R2, and ISP, and I missed that part. So it should be working, so we can make that happen. Serial 010, whoops, 010, Encap Ppp. And so that's going to bring it up, and so now connectivity will work, and EIGRP reconfirmed, so we're good. So now we're going to be configuring Ppp authentication between router 1 and router 3. So as we pull router 1 up here, the Pap authentication is very, very straightforward, and we do that in 2 locations. Very simple. So I'll come out, we'll do it in the order that they show. We're going to create a username and password. So I'm going to say username R3. And remember from lecture, when we're talking about the username and password combinations, you should never see the username password command on the router on which you're making that configuration. The username should not be the same as the router on which you're entering the command. So in other words, I'm putting the username of the neighbor router here because this is how I'm going to verify that information, right? This is how that information is going to be verified. So it's username R3 because R3 is the router on the other side. Now, and we're going to talk about this, you'll notice it says secret class. So let's go with the activity. I'll say secret class, and I'm going to hit enter. And we are rewarded with points, but we're going to come back to that because we've just created an MD5 hash for the password, right? And that's what we're going to see if we were to look at the running config. So I'm going to say interface serial 000 Ppp Authentication Pap, right? So very simple. We do a username and a password. We say on this interface, Ppp Authentication Pap. You can see it takes it down immediately because now router 3 is not going to be able to authenticate with router 1. So then what do we do to resolve this? Well, I have to say Ppp Pap sent username. Now this is the username I'm sending. And this needs to match that username command on the other router. So I say username R1, password is Cisco, right? So now we come to router 3. And we're doing the same exact thing over here on router 3. I say username R1. I'm expecting R1 to be sending me a username and password. And we simply put in secret Cisco, right? Because it wasn't class, it was Cisco, was what we configured under the interface for Pap Authentication. So username R1 secret Cisco. And then we go under the interface and we simply say Ppp Authentication Pap, Ppp Pap sent username. I'm going to send R3 over and it matches the username command that we put in on router 1 with a password of class. Now, you'll see that it comes up and we have a new adjacency. This right here could be of concern. So let's go to a real set of Cisco routers, and of course we'll use router 8 and 9 since these are actually pre-configured interface brief. I'm going to trim this down. We're going to begin at serial because I only want to see that. And I believe serial 000 is what we were using the other day. So it shows up, it shows up. So let's throw a quick ping command on here, 192.168.1.9. So I've got connectivity, show IP, or how about show interface serial 000. And what do we see? Our encapsulation is HDLC, and we are up. So everything looks good. So let's make those same changes here. Let's say username, and I'll use the same router numbers, or the router numbers that correspond to these routers. So username router 9 secret class. Go under interface serial 000, and I'm going to say Ppp Encap Ppp first. We need to change the encapsulation over first, and then Ppp Authentication Pap, and then let me go ahead and put in here Ppp Pap sent username. I'm going to send R8 because that's me, and the password that I'm going to use is Cisco. So that's what I'm using for my response to the challenge, right? I'm going to be sending password of Cisco and R8 as the username. Now, you'll notice that serial 000 changed it down. So when I say do ping 192.168.1.9, right, exactly. It's not going to work just like the other side. So now let's go ahead and come over here to router 9. And let's do the exact same configuration that we did on router 3. We'll go into global config. I'm going to say username router 8, right? Because I'm expecting to see router 8 send me information. So I need to have a username password entry. Secret Cisco. So it was, actually it was class, was it not? And this will be an easy fix here. Yeah, no, I said Cisco. Okay, so we'll use Cisco on this side. We'll use, I guess we'll just use Cisco, right? Even though it could be different, we'll keep it with Cisco. So username R8, secret Cisco interface serial 000, PPP, whoops, or we'll say Encap and then Ppp Authentication Pap, and then Ppp Pap sent username. I'm sending R9 because that's who I am, and my password that I'm going to be sending over is Cisco, right? So we have username R8, secret Cisco. So if I was to say do show run include username, and then do show run interface serial 000, you can see that I'm sending over I'm sorry, I lost my place here. So you can see we have our username command configured, right? Now you can see that this is hashed, right? It's an MD5, type 5 MD5 hash between or for R8, right? And here's the sent username. I'm sending over Cisco. So here's my configuration. And then on router 8, you can see that if I were to say do show run include username, do show run interface serial 000, Pap authentication is set up. R8 is sending R8 with the password of Cisco. I've got my R9, and where is it at here? It looks like it wrapped around, but there it is, right? This was the R9 entry, and the password was Cisco. And just to confirm that, let me make sure. Let's say username R9 secret Cisco, right? Let's make sure that we've got that correct. And so it is Cisco on both sides. And take a look at what's going on here. The interface was bouncing for a second, but now it's showing that the interface is up. So do show IP interface brief. Whoops, and let's start that, begin at serial. All right, and it shows that we are up. So I'm going to say do ping 192.168.1.9, right? And everything is working. We've got the right password on both sides. And when we create the hash with PAP, it appears to be working, right? Now, this is important. It appears to be working, but we're about to do Chap authentication, where they're going to ask us to do the same thing. So when we come over here with Chap, right, it says configure Chap. Let's go ahead and do this now between the ISP and router 3. So we'll bring the cloud back up. We'll pull the ISP router up. We'll go from user exec to privilege exec into global config, and I'm going to say username, and actually they want us to put a host name here. Hostname ISP, we can do that. So username R3, and if we didn't put the host name, there's still a way that we can do this, right? I could say username R3 secret Cisco. Now, with PAP, again, right? With PAP, it's working. We're not having any issues with that MD5 password. With Chap, it is not going to work. It's going to work in Packet Tracer because they've got it pre-canned to work. But that is not a valid configuration with Chap authentication. And this is unfortunately a carryover from the previous version of this course. So we set the username R3 secret Cisco. I'm going to go to interface serial 000, and I'm going to say Ppp Authentication Chap, right? So you can see that the connection goes down because the other side is not configured for Chap yet on router 3. And let me see if they put this in here. Ppp Authentication Chap, do they give us? Yeah, so it's not in here. And when I say it's not in here, this is what I'm looking for. Just like when you said Ppp Authentication or Ppp Pap sent username, I can configure that. If I get under interface serial 00, I can say Ppp Chap, and you can set the host name to an alternate value. Now, this is beyond CCNA, but know that it's here. And the same thing, I can set the password as well, right? So you can set both of those options with CHAP, just like you can with PAP. However, here, they're not going to be asking us to do that in this packet tracer activity. So now let's pull router 3. I'll click the back button this time right away. We'll get to router 3, and we are going to put in a username of ISP and a secret, and this is not correct, right? They're having you do this, but this will not work in the real world. So username ISP, secret Cisco, and let me make sure. Oh yeah, so, and this is interesting here. Before I even entered in the Ppp Authentication Chap, take a look at what happened. It brought that interface up. Would you expect that? Do show run. If we come down to the interface here of serial 010, encapsulation PPP, right? But I don't have Ppp Authentication Chap. And this is going to start the conversation as to how PPP ideally is used, or realistically was used back in the day. Is that this is my telco, we've got the DCE here, this is where the challenge, right? The telco is going to be challenging the customer, not the other way around. So the telco challenges the customer. And that's why we need the full configuration for the Chap authentication on the telco side, but we don't on the customer side. However, and we're going to vet this here on routers 8 and 9 with real Cisco iOS, I believe you have to have the Ppp Authentication Chap, that at least has to be here. You don't have to. And let me think about this for a second. I'm trying to remember. Yeah, you may be able to get away without having it there. We'll see. But I think I at least have to have the Ppp Authentication Chap command so that it's running Chap, that it's trying to authenticate with Chap so that the challenge comes back from the telco. So again, there's some things that I'm not happy with in this activity, and let's sort that out. So the first is that you can see it's working, right? So do we have connectivity from the PC now out to the internet? And we do. And I'm telling you that the use of the secret, and the reason it doesn't work, because you're sending a hash of a hash, because the password, right, that's used in the MD5 hash that Chap uses. So if you're hashing a hash, it's not going to work. And let's look at that. Let's conclusively vet these two things I've just told you. That one, it's not going to work if you're putting secret in there. And two, you have to have it on, at least at a minimum, on the customer side, Ppp Authentication Chap, in order to have it try to authenticate. So here we go. Let's do this. I'm going to exit out here. Actually, we're going to get back into serial 000, do show run interface serial 000, and we're going to say, and I'll just do this, Encap HDLC, and this should remove, this is key, because that should remove all Ppp authentication. Perfect, right? And that, in the previous video, I commented on pulling things off. On router 9, let me do it the alternative way. Let me say no Encap PPP, because the question now becomes, did that pull the Ppp Pap command off? So do show run interface serial 000. Okay, it did. So good. So it's two ways that you can approach it to get the legacy, or I should say the unwanted configuration, off of there. So now we're back to the basic setup here. So now let's go ahead and say no username R8, right? So do show run, do show run include username. We should get nothing, and we do. So let's say username R8 secret, and I'll use Cisco again. So when I say do show run include username, you can see that we have that MD5 hash there. Now let's go into the interface serial 000. I'm going to say Encap Ppp Authentication Chap, Ppp Authentication Chap, and then we are good to go. So that's all we need on this side. And let me make sure, did I state that right? Yeah, Ppp Authentication Chap. All right, so we're good to go on this side. So now we're going to come over to the router 8 side, and we're going to do this. We're going to say Encap Ppp, and then Ppp Authentication Chap, right? So, oh, you know what? I just realized. So it's going to go up, down. So by default, and actually, okay, fortuitous failure here, right? So I was thinking that the name of the router is just R8, but what is the host name of my router here? It's R8-2811. So what I would want to do is I would want to say Ppp Chap and set the host name to simply R8. Because now that's the host name that's getting sent across that's going to correspond to the username command. Because what I should have done was said R8-2811. But this is okay. We'll send over R8. Now you'll notice it was bouncing up, down here. But even if I was to say, let's put in Encap, or I'm sorry, not Encap. We've got the Encap Ppp already. Ppp Authentication Chap. So I'm sending R8 as my host name, right? That's what the entry on router 9 is set to. Let me shut the interface down, right? Because I'm going to reset things here and then say no shut to force a renegotiation with PPP. And take a look, it says the link is up. But is it going to stay up? Do show IP interface brief, and let's begin with serial and see. So take a look. So link up, down. Interface changed to up, but we are down at layer 2. So what you're probably thinking is, well, you're missing the username statement on this side. Okay, let's put that in. And I'll make sure that we get it right this time. And it is router 9-2811. So username router 9-2811, secret, and the secret is Cisco. So is that going to fix things? Let's shut the interface down. Whoops, get into serial 000. Let's shut the interface down. And you can see we're administratively down. We'll say no shut, bring the interface back up. And you can see it says that it's changed state to up, but do you see the line protocol? Do show IP interface brief, begin at serial, and we should see up, down. And the reason that we are up, down is because Chap cannot deal with a hash of a hash. It cannot be an MD5 password. It is not going to work. In fact, if I was to say do debug Ppp authentication, and I'm going to be very disappointed here and this can be very verbose in terms of the output, and it may lock me out here of the router temporarily, but I can power it off and power it back on. Now let me say do you all. And so take a look. The interface went up, the interface went down. And you can see here that we're using the default call direction, treating the connection as a dedicated line. We have an output challenge going out, right? We have an input challenge because we've set it up on both sides. You can see the IDs that are being used, and we're good here because we've set the usernames and what's being sent. Send auth response fail, right? Unable to authenticate peer. And the reason that we're seeing this, and let me say do you all, and let's turn the debugging off. The reason that we're seeing this is because you cannot use secret. You can't use any kind of hashing. It simply has to be username, whatever the username is going to be, and then the password command, right? It has to be the password command with CHAP. With PAP, as you saw, you can get away with it, right? But with CHAP, it's not going to work if you put secret in there. Now, it worked over here in the packet tracer activity, right? But in reality, that is not going to work. And so we'll finish this out here on the real routers. And let me do this. So I'll just say Encap HDLC. And then if I was to say do show run interface serial 000, you can see nothing is there. And let me pull up no username R9-2811. No username R9-2811, right? And then let's do it again. So I'm going to say username R9-2811, and then password Cisco. And then let's get under the interface, Encap Ppp Authentication Chap. And now we'll come over to router 9, and we're going to say Encap HDLC. We're going to pop out of here. We're going to say no username router 8, and then we'll create it again, and this time we'll get it right. Username R8-2811. We'll go under interface serial 0. Oops, sorry. Get the username command right here. Hold on. Username R8, password Cisco. Go under the serial interface, Encap Ppp Authentication Chap. And what we should see now, and I can even go ahead and shut the interface down, right? And you can see that the line protocol is down, the interface is down, and I'll say no shut. And now that we can see that it shows up do show IP interface brief. Oops, and let's begin at serial. And you can see that now we are up. But what is the problem now that we're in the up state? So is the interface bouncing? And the interface is bouncing on this side, and is it bouncing on this side? It is, right? So let's take a look. Do show run interface serial 000. And we can see why. It did not remove, I thought when I did the Encap HDLC, so we'll say no Ppp Chap hostname R8, and that is our problem. And how about a no Ppp? I thought it had pulled all of that off of here. Let's get rid of this too. Copy and paste. There we go. So now we've got a little cleaner setup here. All right, so we've got and I'll shut the interface down and no, and you see me shutting and no shutting, and this is to speed things along. So you can see the interface is down, and now the protocol is down. When I say no shut, we should see two messages, the interface coming up and the protocol coming up. And this works because we did not use the secret MD5 hash setup for the passwords. So do show IP interface brief, begin at serial, and we're up, do ping 192.168.1.9, and we've got connectivity. So again, do show run include username. Again, it will work when you use the password command. It will not work if you put secret in there. And I really kind of disappointed that that wasn't resolved between the releases with the activities. So let's go ahead and finish this up. On router 3, I believe we are already set up here. Let's see, do show run. And Encap Ppp, this is the link to the ISP. So yeah, we haven't put those commands in there. So let's get into global config. Interface serial 010. And we're going to say Encap Ppp, which is already done. Let's do Ppp Authentication Chap. And take a look. It says that it's already up. And in fact, that's a good point about you can do it on both sides, but it doesn't have to be set up on both sides. But it's going to be expecting a username, ISP, and again, secret. This, in reality, that secret is not going to work, although we're probably going to get points for that working. And so you can see here, We've got everything entered in on routers. Repeat step 1 and configure authentication between 2 and 3, changing usernames as needed. So we need to do that. But we've covered this here on both sides. So we're going to do between router 2 and router 3 with PP, or with PAP. I'm sorry, are we doing that with PAP? Yeah, we're going to do that with PAP. So let's say on router 3, username R2, R2, and it has us using secret. And we'll just use, we'll use Cisco for everything. We'll say username R2, password Cisco, and actually that was what it was looking for. Interface serial 001, and we've already got the Encap PPP. Ppp Authentication is going to be Pap, and then Ppp Pap sent username, right? So what are we sending? We're sending R3, and we're sending password, and this is where, let's see if it likes Cisco. I'm hoping that it wants router 3. And actually, let's do this. I'll put class, because that's what it had on the previous. Yeah, and that's what it was looking for. All right, so we're good there. So now we'll come down to router 2. And we'll go from user exec to privilege exec into global config. And let's go ahead and say username R3 secret is class, because that's what we are sending, the Ppp Pap sent username and password. So we should get some points for that. And then we go into interface serial 001, and we're going to say Encap. I believe we did this Ppp. Let's make sure. Ppp Authentication Pap, and we should get some points for that. And actually, wow, it gave us all the points for that before we even said Ppp Pap sent username is going to be R2, and the password is Cisco. Now, this wraps things up, but remember, this is critical. When you are using Chap, you cannot have a secret password. It will not work. And we saw that over here. And if you're wondering, well, what happens if you type, I'm sorry, not username, but service password encryption? Service password encryption. Does that break things? And so let's go in, let's shut the interfaces down, right? So I'll say shut one side down to force Chap to re-authenticate. So we're down, I'll say no shut. And let's see, could we get away with service password encryption? And we do. So service password encryption is okay, because again, it's a very, very weak, it's almost a cipher. I don't even want to call it a hash, right? It's a cipher, but secret will not work with Chap authentication. It's not going to work. And again, disappointing that they show that to you in that packet tracer activity, but realistically it won't work. So, all right, and that is going to wrap up packet tracer activity 2.3.2.6, where we looked at configuring Pap authentication and Chap authentication. And remember, with Chap authentication, even though the activity showed the password as being put in as a secret, that is not going to work. You have to use the username password command for that to work. And you can turn on service password encryption, because again, it's more of a cipher than it is a hash. All right, thanks so much for watching, guys, and I will see you on Tuesday. Enjoy the weather and have a great weekend.